Live, this is One for the Record. I'm Diana, and today is July 5th, 2013. We made it! Yay! Here are your news updates for today. The Extinction Protocol 2012 and beyond. 6.1 magnitude earthquake strikes near Solomon Islands. Quebec forest fire causes widespread blackouts for a second day. Okay, eruption from Mexico's Popocatépetl volcano grounds U.S. flights. Alrighty then, I didn't see anything worth reporting on the breaking news. Moving on, the Watchers watching the world. Okay, Earth at aphelion on July 5th. 2013, which is the further, I guess that means it's the furthest away from the sun that we are. Strong activity with tremor, incandescence, and multiple plume emissions at Popocatépetl. Alright, moving on. E&E News, Energy News. Fukushima, Japan. Wreck causes equipment breakdown at Fukushima No. 2 nuclear plant. Here we go again with the rats. Asahi, high cesium levels in a year detected in... Highest level cesium levels in a year detected in Fukushima. 1,780,000 becquerels per kilogram on downtown rooftop. Okay, and then on the 3rd, interview Fukushima's reactor number 4's problem is not only its nuclear fuel pool, pit filled with highly radioactive materials. Alrighty then, let's move on. It's never going to end, and it's going to accumulate. It's just going to get worse and worse until people just start dropping down to where they can't hide it. Just falling out and dropping down dead. New flyover of giant sinkhole shows yellowish substance covering surface. I'm still waiting for that to come up. I'm going to try to get that footage for you. Alrighty then. So, it is 5 days down. We made it. Hang in there. It's the eve of Saturday. Have fun. Be safe. And I'll see you again on the flip side. Also, I heard from Pastor Paul Bagley that New Mexico woke up to a foot of hail. Doesn't look like, it looks kind of like snow on the side of the road, but it's hail. There you go. Crazy weather. So, everyone be prepared for anything. I'll see you again tomorrow. Stay safe.
Welcome back, and I'm doing my live show from the beautiful downtown Portland, Riverside. And we have the amazing Professor James McKenney with a major update. In fact, if you go to his website, jmccsdi.com, Professor McKenney's got a major update on what's going on in terms of space weather and a major announcement. And there's some strange things going on with the sun. So, Professor McKenney, tell us what's happening. Are they using proper measurement tools? The regular level of we call science like NASA is for the public. And, of course, we've talked about this before, Tier 1 science. So what's happening?
Yeah, Dr. Bill, here's the situation. In about the late 1900s or the late 1990s, NASA was given an edict, kind of a scientific goal, and that was to measure the solar output in terms of the electromagnetic spectrum, all the way from microwave to infrared, all the way up into the ultraviolet. So they designed and put up some satellites, and of course, in typical NASA fashion, they assumed the answers in building their spacecraft. The design of the spacecraft was meant to look at long-term changes. From what I know from my research and many times I've tried to tell them directly, that the solar output is variable on a almost hourly, sometimes minute-to-minute basis. And it can vary wildly, and that the surface fusion, the fusion of the sun is at the surface of the sun. And so as a result, it can change very dramatically from high to low. And so their instrumentation on their satellite was completely misdesigned for what it had to measure. They assumed that the changes in solar output would be over decades or hundreds of years or thousands of years, when the real changes are in the middle of the spectrum. It could be a certain small region of the spectrum, which is all of a sudden exploding in brightness. So what they did is they measured the average and then took the sampling over very long periods of time. And so around 2007, they started to look at shorter samplings and discovered that the sun sometimes has thousands of times more output, especially in certain bands of the electromagnetic spectrum, than what the average is. And this might last for an hour, and then it goes away. And so then in around 2007, they stopped reporting. They stopped modeling. They went off into what they call modeling land, where they try and model what's going on. And, of course, their models could not conceivably approach what's really happening, because they believe that the fusion of the sun is deep in the core of the sun, and therefore the energy has to migrate outwards. And so they're still going on this basically 1600s view of the sun being a hot ball, a hot glowing ball, which it isn't. It just cannot possibly work that way. One time I was at a conference, an American Geophysical Union conference, and an engineer came up to me who was not part of the conference. And he says, I know who you are, and I need somebody I can talk to about this problem with the sun. And I thought, well, okay, I'll listen to the guy. And he says, look, I'll show you my calculations. He said, if you take the mass of the sun and you convert it using E equals mc squared into the amount of light energy that the whole sun could put off of it over 4.5 billion years, given that it's burning at a constant rate, the same constant rate we have today, he said there's not enough matter in the entire sun to power the sun for 4.5 billion years at the rate which it's putting out energy now and converting it to mass. He said that doesn't include the solar wind, which is throwing out protons, primarily protons, in the solar wind at a constant rate or at an assumed constant rate. And he said the sun doesn't have enough mass to do this, but they're saying it does. And so I told him, I said, well, yeah, there's some problems here, and I've shown that the fusion of the sun is at the surface. And so there's not enough hydrogen in the surface of the sun to maintain this level of heat over that length of time, so there must be a renewal process going on. And so anyway, we talked for a while. So anyway, here's NASA up there with a satellite from 2003 to 2007 making measurements, believing that the energy is coming from the core of the sun. It has a long-term average. And what they're looking for ultimately is climate change over, 10 or 50 years, expecting a minimal change in solar output that would affect climate. And all of a sudden they wake up in 2007 and realize that the sun is putting out sometimes thousands of times more energy in a certain wavelength than it normally does. And they go, we don't know anything, we can't explain this, we don't know anything about what's going on, our instrumentation is totally incorrect. So they hibernate into Never Never Land. And fast forward to 2013, my announcement is basically stating that, I had a fan call me last week, and he says, Jim, I just got to tell you this, because you made this comment about the sun variability on your show last week, and he said some people out in San Diego have a water slide, one of these things you spray water on for the kids, and they always put it in the same place in their yard. And the kids slide down the water slide, and then they roll it up and put it away. Well, that day, when they rolled up the water slide, all the grass was black. And they thought, good grief, what's going on here? And so then he started attributing many other factors that the sun, regarding the sun, very strange things. And he says, look, I don't know, but, you know, start talking more about this. And so,
well, the effect of the ultraviolet light, I had a botanist, and I was doing marine bacteriology 40 years ago, well before I went into medicine, and he discovered that a 75% drop in the ozone layer could cause a destruction of the upper 30 feet or 10 meters of the benthic layer of the ocean, which makes 80% of the world's oxygen, would kill all the grassy plants and would kill all the trees, the fruiting trees in bloom. So you only need a 75% drop and a UV shift. So we're seeing now UV rates. If you look at the UV chart over North America, through Mexico, Central America, and I'm sure it's elsewhere around the world, the ultraviolet light levels are at unprecedented levels. These are actually public details. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's public, published, printed charts that tell you you're seeing levels of 11, 12, 13, 14, Mexico City 16. Never seen before. Phoenix, Arizona 13, 14. Typically, even in the spring. And now that we're getting into a few days towards summer, we're seeing ridiculously high levels. And when you go outside, you can tell the sun feels different. Even if it's not brighter on that day, the sun feels different on your skin.
It just feels like there's a pressure on your skin. It feels like you're like, you know, when you go to the tanning booth, the old tanning booths, where they just blasted, you know, you get out and of the sun and you feel like that. But the other thing is, this is not going away.
Yes, Dan Dale mentioned months ago, there were two bands that have been around since 1992, and in the C and D, like A will tan you, the ultra bronzer tanning machines, B will burn you, C will give you cancer, and D, which could cause DNA damage, and adducts and also will photoactivate drugs, chemicals, and even biological molecules or toxins in your body's skin, and D will kill you. So we're seeing two new bands in the C and D band area, and what you're saying is the ultraviolet light rating, this is public knowledge, has gone into orbit. It's really, really high now.
Yeah, so people, first of all, people have to be very careful, have to wear sunscreen or long-sleeve shirts and headgear, but that sounds like we're heading into a break.
I think we are. We will be back in just a minute with amazing Professor McCanney. We're going to post up the chart. Go to his website, jmccsci.com. We'll be back.
I remember when I lost my mind. There was something so pleasant about that place.
Welcome back, and Professor James McCanney. The website is jmccsci.com. We have a new book on comets. Usually you're on at least once or twice a month, Professor McCanney. I posted up the EPA website for those people who are a little skeptical. If you look at the UV index, the actual chart for today, June 18th, it's really pretty crazy, pretty ridiculous. And of course, they're only measuring part of the spectrum. They're not giving a breakdown of the amount of energy in the A spectra. A is tan, B is burns, D is cancer, D is death. They don't do that. But we know the overall index is really, really unusually high. If it's an index to 10, and you're in Southern California or Arizona and you're 12, and if you're in Mexico City, you're 16, that's dangerous. It causes pterygiums of the eye. It just suppresses your immune system. It can cause skin cancer death. And it can also penetrate deeper into other organs. It can photoactivate drugs you're taking, which are called photoactivatable medications. They can change not only vitamins, but can also cause degradation of nutrients in your body. So it's a stressor. And there's a lot of things that stress this plant. Some plants can adapt to it. Those that can't, it can stunt their growth or actually cause a famine. So if there's a major shift in the ultraviolet light, either due to one or more factors, like decrease in magnetosphere, because you were going to have a magnetic shift, decrease in oxygen in the upper atmosphere, or decrease in ultraviolet light in space, which is not happening. We have plenty of ultraviolet light. We right now still have plenty of oxygen, so my guess is there's going to be something happening with the magnetosphere that's allowing this, or just a shift in the actual energy from the sun, which is even more probable. The sun is just generating more of these kind of energies, and they just haven't pursued the science accurately because they have a priori assumptions that the sun always produces a constant amount of certain energy, almost like, you know, a rheostat on your air conditioning machine or your heater. It doesn't do that. It varies on all kinds of variables.
Yeah, that's the thing the scientists assumed, and I was just rereading here on the break. It's called SOURCE, solar. Let me pull that up. It's called the. Let me pull this up just a second. Solar Radiation and Climate Experiment. This is a satellite that was launched in 2003, and the assumption is that the sun would change over long periods of time, and so they're talking about a 0.1% change over the solar cycle of 11 years. This is what they're trying to measure. Then all of a sudden, in 2007, they start looking at some of this finer data, more radiation specific, and they realize that, like I say, 1,000 times more energetic within just a couple hours. So they're totally baffled. The other thing is, I believe that the military, what I call Tier 1 science,